Well, getting the shutter off this proved to be more of a problem than I was expecting, as I might have previously mentioned, and it was only solved in the end by me running a drill bit through the retaining ring, through one of the two notches, which I was able to split that ring and get the shutter off. And the shutter I've dealt with already, but that piece of the video you might see before or after this, I'm not decided which. Anyway, let's carry on with the dismantling of this thing. So, here's the focus scale ring. I'm just going to scribe a line on that and one on the outer helical, so I can tell where this is supposed to be when it's back together. These parts are uniformly very dirty. Just didn't much of a surprise at all, really. Right, let's lift off the focus scale ring. Pop that to one side. Now, in these holes here, that's the screws that hold the bellows to the back of the front standard. And I'd like to see if they'll come loose. That one does. That one does. That one's a bit reluctant. That one does. This one has a bad feel to it. It might be going to break. Tighten it up, run it back out. No, it's coming loose. That should allow the bellows to pull back, and they do. Gather those screws up. Right. So, we have 4 screws holding the focus together here to the front standard. They do not really want to come loose. I'm just going to collapse this front down so I can press down on this without breaking the struts at all. Those screws will come loose now. Right. Gather those screws up. And this, the front standard should come out now, complete with its outer helical and inner helical. Can rotate that completely. Those two are really gummed up. What I want to do is get these arranged so that the front surfaces are dead level with each other. Then I can run a scribe mark across it and I'll know that that goes back together in the same position. But these threads are pretty clogged up with filth, and they're preventing me from moving that. So I'll just apply a bit of naphtha there That's better. The inner is still proud of the outer at that point. I'll have to clean this a bit with a bit more naphtha. Once it's disassembled, I can do a proper job of cleaning it. But just in the interim, I need to get that impacted rubbish out of those threads. That might help. Yes, that was it. So I just want the inner and outer to be flush with each other as best as I'm able to judge. And then the scratch I put on the outer helical to line it up with the focus scale ring. I can extend that line across to the inner helical. So I'm just going to put a little V mark on there. Now I know that when these two components are assembled together in the correct position, those two parts will line up. Right, so they're separated for cleaning. All of this is very greasy and unpleasant and covered in grit and rubbish. Just collapse those struts again. This piece, this is our depth of field scale. I want that off. Those screws are very reluctant, so I'm going to use the hammer. So I'll get a very short, stiff screwdriver here and applying some torque with fingers and thumbs. I'll give it a couple of taps on the top. That screw is coming loose or shearing off. It's a bit hard to tell which. That one appears to be coming loose. Very stiff. You can see corrosion products coming out there, so that's what's going on there. So I'll just apply a bit of naphtha on there to act as a lubricant as much as anything else, to see if I can get that screw to come out. It is turning, but it's only turning a tiny amount. I don't think that the screw holes extend through the casting, or do they? That might be one right there. It is. In which case I can apply a bit of naphtha there to the exposed screw. That screw is damaged and it's not going to play nice, I can just tell. I don't think that's going to come out nicely for me. It is turning, but it's not going to come completely out. There must be damage on that screw there. The threads themselves are likely to be completely clogged up. This is the one that came out from the other side, and it's full of white corrosion products. It's probably very much the same here or worse. I don't think that's going to come. I'll do some more hammer work. It's had a change of heart. Some encouragement with the hammer caused it to rethink its priorities in life, and it's decided it will come loose now. So that's off. Here's our depth of field scale or calculator, 3 pieces. It should be 4 pieces because this piece here is sitting on the leather. So I've got that off. What have we got left on this body that can come out? Well, the leather is lifting, and we know it has to come off anyway. It's lifting, it's been lifting off more and more while I've been working on the camera, so it's obviously just deciding it's going to give up. Alright, I'll get a scalpel onto that. Let's try the scalpel. I'm going to run a bit of naphtha down the back of that. Not because it will dissolve any adhesive, but because it will act as a lubricant and allow the scalpel blade to slide over the metal body a bit easier. Because aluminium is fairly soft, the blade is likely to dig in to the aluminium. There's a lot of corrosion under here, as you might well expect. All this white rubbish here is corrosion. There's also fibres of leather, of course, and here's the leather. That'll all need to be scraped clean. I'll do the other piece of leather. The leather here is quite dry and brittle. How much of that is just natural or how much the corrosion has affected the leather, I don't know. Alright, that's off. Corrosion here too, much like there was on the other side, of course. There's leather on the top here. Let's see if we can get that off in one piece. This might not be so bad. This won't have been in firm contact with the leather case, because I strongly suspect that the camera had been stored somewhere in its leather ever-ready case, and leather ever-ready cases are exceptionally good at retaining moisture. Okay, so that came off without too much of a fight. The leather on the base. This is more lumpy. This I would expect normally, I would expect this to come off easier than the other one. Again, I'm using this naphtha here, this cigarette lighter fluid, not to melt the salt, not as a solvent to melt the adhesive, because it won't, but as a lubricant to help me get under the leather. The adhesive will be hard and brittle. Leather and leatherettes, of course, peel from the edges, not from the centre. So normally you can get the edges free fairly easily. This one's stuck quite well at the back edge there for some reason. And here, this, see what this is like here, that's okay. So here I'm working from the front of the body towards the back. The leather is very, very stiff and inflexible. And this section at the back here is well stuck. I'm working towards that. You can hear the scalpel scraping against the aluminium body. I'm keeping it firmly pressed against the aluminium so that the blade doesn't rise and cut through the leather. Alright, so that's off. I'm not sure that it's worth the fight trying to get the tripod socket off, but we can have a look. I'll apply a bit of naphtha around that. And a little bit of hammer work here will be involved. No, that screw came off without a fight. I bet its mates. It'll just make it easier when I'm preparing the body for paint and painting it. The more that comes off, the better. Now, our central post in here is riveted onto the body. I could drill that out and knock that thing off, but I'd rather not. The spring in particular is riveted to the body at that point. I'd have to drill those out and then re-rivet that. I really don't want to. Let's see if I can get the struts mechanism out now. Now we're held with one screw here. See if we can get some better focus on this. This camera's doing particularly badly today. That's better. We have one screw here, one screw here. In the back of the film cassette chamber, we have one screw here and here. Now, how well they will play, neither of those ones in the film chamber want to move. These ones are easy to deal with the hammer. and so hammering they shall get. Making sure the groove in that screw is cleaned out as much as possible. Here we go. Well, that screw's loose. Alright. Must have heard me coming with the hammer and decided to give up gracefully. What about its mate at the top? That's loose too. So that leaves us these two in the film cassette chamber. Well, I'm going to have to hold this camera between my knees now while I whack those screws and get them loose. Well, that didn't take much, just a couple of taps to encourage those screws to come loose. And that means the struts can be lifted from the body. Have a look at what we've got left. Okay, so I've got the bellows glued into the body. Everything else is off that's going to come off. Now, the bellows may just lift off because given the amount of corrosion, chances are there's corrosion underneath the adhesive holding the leather to the casting. It's not really... Oh, look at that. As soon as I started, you can hear that sound as it peels away. That's the bellows coming adrift from the casting. I just applied some gentle pressure and it peeled from one corner. Here's our bellows. You can see the corrosion products on the back here and the old adhesive. We can have a look at the bellows. The corner here is not good. That front edge there is not good either. This is the top of the bellows, so the corner here is blown out completely. So my first thing I need to do before we put this camera back together is see if I can patch these bellows in a useful way, and I'll flip them upside down so that the best part of the bellows is at the top. That's traditionally what you do with cameras, is that you turn the bellows upside down because where your fingers and things approach them, they're always at the top edge. Okay, so looking at all this filth in here, I'll clear my bench and show you what we've got. This is pretty ugly. Okay, well this is pretty rough in here. That paint is clinging to virtually nothing. This is all just floating in space, the paint. It's just air space behind it. So all of this stuff here I will clean. I'll take this thing off too. This is our catch for the front door. I need to unscrew this button. And I've got a pair of crimp lug pliers that do that job quite well. These will do the job nicely. They've got rounded tips there. Let's see if it'll grip on here and unscrew it. Yep. Oh, it's tight. Given the level of corrosion here, I suppose that shouldn't come as a surprise. very short, that screw. It's only a few threads. Well, it looks like that's sheared off, that screw, unfortunately. So I'll have to come up with a clever way of putting that back together. Still, that's what we're here for. So swing that arm out, lift it out of the body. That just leaves me with this filthy mess to deal with. So I'll use mechanical means to get rid of all this powdery corrosion that's visible on the surface. Then I'll review what I'm left to deal with. Some of this paint that looks reasonably sound is just bubbled up. There's corrosion underneath it. That powdery corrosion. So there's really nothing for it but to scrape all that stuff off. I might use chemical paint stripper. Clean the surfaces and repaint the whole thing. The paint further down here appears to be reasonably sound by comparison, but I'll have to review that and see how bad that is. I'm not enthusiastic to strip the paint off the whole lot because it'll be hard to get that evenly painted in there afterwards, but we can certainly do it. So I'll just work through this, scraping this rubbish off, and we'll review what I've got once I've done the mechanical cleaning. Well, that's about as good as I can get it, just peeling the loose stuff off with the back of the scalpel blade or the tip of the screwdriver. I'll now move on to using a wire wheel on the Dremel and do all of the edges of the body. They will need to be nice and smooth if they're going to take the paint well. These are the pieces that you'll see, just the edges. These will be under leather, of course, top and bottom, or under the top cover. Same at the base. In the camera back here, that's certainly going to need more work. The paint is, the loose stuff is mostly all come off, but that was off before we started really. But this I'll have to clean all this up, and I'll do the same. I'll use the wire wheel on the Dremel to see if that will lift anything else off or just clean those surfaces up. And I'll make a decision about chemical stripper after that. Well, there we go. After some cleaning, buffing with the Dremel, rubbing the edges back with a bit of Scotch-Brite and fine sandpaper. I'm going to clean this in the ultrasonic cleaner now, see if I can get all the rubbish and dirt out of there. Possibly some more paint will fall off.